Hello everyone out there, it's Blue here at Blue Bears Games, and I'm finally back to doing my Blues Budget Battle Brews, which as you all know is my Budget Commander deck series. These are the decks that I take to conventions and sell online, and I sell at conventions, I sell online, and it's good for helping those who are just starting out that don't want to spend a lot of money for a deck. So, if you know, you know. That's pretty much what it comes down to. This week, we're going to jump back into Commander, starting with Bruenor, Battlehammer. He is a Boros color or red-white commander, and this deck will be a Voltron-esque style of deck. Voltron can be done two different ways. You can do it with the more brittle version, which is the auras, or you can do it in the artifact, a little bit more durable because they stay on the board if your creature dies. We're going to do it with equipment, and this one is going to be equipment-based or equipment-centric. So let's get started. What does Bruenor do? So it's 4 to cast for a 5/3. Not bad stats, actually. It's kind of what red and white does, is they do low mana value for the cost for a high power and a low toughness. So it's a dwarf warrior. Each creature that you control gets +2/+0 for each equipment attached to it. So that's why this is going to be an equipment-based Voltron deck. And then you may pay 0 rather than pay the equip cost. For the first equip ability you activate each turn, that includes your opponent's, but you can't equip during your opponent's turn unless you have something special that says you can. So let's get into the deck. And it's been a while since I've done a commander video. So if you don't remember how it goes, we start with the lands. Let me zoom out so you can see everything going on. So red-white on a budget. Remember, these are $40 that I sell them for. So you have to kind of go with the flow on this one and figure out what you can do on a budget. There have come availability of cheaper quote-unquote dual lands. This is one of them. They're not true dual lands, but they do, they go with the flow as far as it's a dual land. So we start with Temple of Triumph. It's the red-white temple. They come into play tapped, and then when they come into play, you can scry 1. So all temples do that. I try to include them because it's a rare land that actually can help you get your deck in order. Then we go to Boros Guildgate, and remember, we're on opponent colors, so there's not going to be that many quote-unquote dual lands here. Lorehold Campus helps you scry 1 more than once, whereas Temple of Triumph, when it comes to the play, you can pay 4 and tap this one, the Campus, and scry 1. Stone Quarry comes into play tapped, adds the 2 colors. Windscarred Crag gives you a life when it comes into play. Boros Garrison is the bounce land, so when it enters the battlefield tapped, and then you have to return a land you control to its owner's hand, but it taps to add red and white, not just red or white. Dwarven Mine, it counts as a mountain. Always good to count as a basic land type, because when something says to search for a mountain, you can. Not a basic land. This is not a basic land. So inherently, a mountain has tap to add red, and then it enters the battlefield tapped unless you control 3 or more other mountains. Most likely you will. And then when it enters the battlefield untapped, you can create a 1/1 dwarf token. Some cycling lands. The white one from Urza Saga is Drifting Meadow. Temple of the False God. So tap to add 2 colorless, but you can only activate the ability if you have 5 or more lands. Hopefully, it works out that way. And since we're going to be a Voltron deck, you need to at least make your Voltron unblockable. So, Rogue's Passage. Evolving Wilds to thin out your deck and go get land. And as I've said many times, usually in a commander deck, I put at least one form of land destruction, because you just never know what you're going to run into. At least this one comes in untapped. It's Field of Ruin. And then the rest is plains. Good old mountains. And the exact number I don't remember off the top of my head. I actually built this deck a while ago, so I'm going to have a link in the description of the video that will actually have on there for you exact numbers of everything. Obviously, commander decks are mostly one of everything, but lands end up being different. So next section, we're going to go into ramp. And red and white don't have a lot of ramp. I mean, white has some. They're not really ramp. They're kind of mana fixing cards. But the way that red usually does it is usually with treasure tokens. But unfortunately, with the boon in treasure token creation, those have gone well outside of the budget range, so I found other ways to do it. One of my favorite ways to do it, especially if you're in a equipment-based Voltron deck, you can just use Explorer Scope. It doesn't hit every time, and I will have suggestions for upgrades to these cards after I show you the deck, but this is where we start on a budget. Explorer Scope says whenever the creature that's equipped with it attacks, you can search or look at the top card of your library, and if it's a land card, put it on the battlefield. It's quasi, I mean, it's hit or miss, but it's still, at least it's a little bit of land ramp. Gold Vein Pick, so another equipment-style way of doing it, because whenever the creature attacks, you create a treasure token. Now, while a lot of the really good treasure token creation cards in Magic right now are hot and expensive, Gold Vein Pick will never be, as far as I'm aware, because, at least in my opinion, because it's a common, and it's not really that great, but it does a specific purpose, which is a little bit of ramp. Boros, Cluestone, and I got a couple of the other ones. I got the Key Rune in here, and I got the Locket. So the good thing about the Boros ones, while they're 3 to cast, and they're kind of remember, we're on a budget, and they actually have a benefit is when you don't need the ramp, eventually you won't. They can sacrifice themselves, at least 2 of them can, to draw cards. This one lets you draw 2 cards. This one lets you draw a card when you sacrifice it. So, I mean, at least it's got a back end to it. The Key Rune, however, is a little different. It doesn't sacrifice to give you cards, it actually just turns into a creature itself, and it becomes a 1/1 red and white soldier artifact creature token with double strike. So it actually fits a little bit of the theme here, where it can become a double striker for double striking 1/1 that you can equip over and over again. And the last card is Burnished Heart as far as ramp goes. So Burnished Heart isn't here just so you can thin out your deck for lands. It's a 3 to cast 2/2. You pay 3, sacrifice it, so you can do it in response to some kind of creature removal. And then you can search your library for up to 2 basic land cards, put them on the battlefield tapped, and shuffle your library. So with Bordeaux colors, that's pretty much the best way on a budget I could figure out how to get some land, or some ramp, not land ramp, but ramp in general. All right, so we're an equipment style deck, so we need some creatures to equip. Now, this is a pretty big section, and it's only because Boros is like the king of equip one. There's a couple of secret commanders in here. There's a couple of creatures that benefit highly from being equipped. So let's go over that. Brass Squires is where we start. It's an artifact creature that you can tap it to attach an equipment to a creature you control. So that means you can get around equip costs, and you can do it as an instant on somebody else's turn. So that's always great benefit. All right. Court Homunculus, it's a 1 to cast 1/1. It's an artifact creature itself, and it gets +1/+1 as long as you control another artifact, which you will in this deck because almost everything is an artifact. There's a couple Metalcraft people in here. Why? Because we're going to have a lot of artifacts out, so might as well buff the other creatures on top of equipping them. So it's a 1 to cast 1/1 with Metalcraft, and it gets +2/+2 as long as you control 3 or more artifacts, and you probably will most of the game. Kitesail Apprentice, doesn't say Metalcraft on it. It has, I'm sorry, this isn't the one. There's another one that's kind of like Metalcraft, but doesn't say it. This one is, as long as it gets equipped at all, it gets +1/+1 in flying. So it's 1 to cast 1/1 that if you put a silly, stupid equipment on it, it'll get bigger, along with whatever the buff for the equipment is. Sunspear Shikari, 2 to cast 2/2, and as long as it's equipped, it gets first strike and lifelink. Let's see, Ingenious Smith, so 2 to cast for a 1/1, and then when Ingenious Smith enters the battlefield, look at the top 4 cards of your library, and you may reveal an artifact card from among them, put it into your hand. It doesn't have to be an equipment, it could be any artifact. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order, and then whenever 1 or more artifacts enter the battlefield under your control, you can put a +1/+1 counter on Ingenious Smith, and this ability can only trigger once a turn, or each turn, actually. So this guy's in here so you can dig. One of the other drawbacks to being in Boros is your card draw is lacking too. So this is a kind of a way to get around it. Relic Seeker, so it's 2 to cast for a 2/2. It has Renown of 1, and that means that when it deals combat damage to a player, it becomes renowned, and the renown for this is it gets a +1/+1 counter. However, when Relic Seeker becomes renowned, you may search your library for an equipment and put it into your hand. So a little bit of quasi-tutoring there. All right, Stram, Senior Edificer, was my way to kind of help you get card draw when there isn't really any. So he's 2 to cast for a 2/2, and whenever you cast an aura, an equipment, or a vehicle, you draw a card. Most of the stuff in here, there's no auras really to speak of, and there's no vehicles, so basically when you cast an equipment. Stonehaven Outfitter, it is a 2 to cast 2/2, and equipped creatures you control get +1/+1. It's basically an anthem creature for anything that's equipped. And then whenever an equipped creature you control dies, you can draw a card. So more ways of trying to find ways to get you to be able to draw cards in Boros colors. Core Outfitter, 2 to cast 2/2. When it enters the battlefield, you may attach an equipment you control to a creature you control, so it kind of gets around the equip costs. Militant Inquisitor gets +1/+0 for each equipment you control. It doesn't have to even be equipped to him, but it would help get him bigger if you did. Ironclad Slayer, 3 to cast 3/2. Whenever it enters the battlefield, you may return target aura or equipment card from your graveyard to your hand. That's to get those equipment back if somebody does a lot of artifact removal spells on you. Treasured Hunter, so it's 3 to cast for a 2/2, and when it comes into play, you can return an artifact card from your graveyard to your hand. So it's not just equipment at that point. There are a couple of artifact creatures in here that could be good for you. There's a couple of non-equipments that could be good for you. So Starnheim Courser makes your artifacts and enchantment spells cost 1 less to cast. It's also a 3 to cast 2/2 flyer. For this one, obviously, it's going to be for the equipment, but for any artifact, because it doesn't say equipment. Arden, Intrepid Archaeologist, so it's 3 to cast for a 2/2, and at the beginning of combat on your turn, you may attach any number of auras or equipment you control, target permanent or player. So when it says or player, that usually means the curses, so it's the aura enchantments that attach to a player. That's what that usually pertains to, but it actually helps you equip all of your equipment to one guy, especially if it's your commander, because then commander damage starts to become lethal after a while. Has partner, don't really care about that at this point though. Solitary Visionary, so it's a 3 to cast 2/2 with Shadow. For those of you who are newer to the game, Shadow was probably a mistake. It basically is a different way of evading blockers. This creature can block or be blocked by only other creatures with Shadow. So it can only block creatures with Shadow and can only be blocked by creatures with Shadow. It was a quasi form of fear back in the day. They just never went through with it after this set. And I think maybe one other card might have it now. If Solitary Visionary, one other card from a set not from Stronghold. From the Tempest block, but the Tempest block as a whole, I think, was the only one, other than I think there was something in Modern Horizons 2 that also has Shadow, or something more recent, but not a lot. Anyway, back to what I was saying. So it has Shadow, and it when it deals combat damage to a player. Actually, this says, yes, okay. If Solitary Visionary at all damages a player, destroy target enchantment that player controls. I'm going to have to look that up, and I'll put it up here if I find anything different. But I think it's supposed to be combat damage, but it looks like you could just equip it with, like, a long shot bow or whatever the one's called, where the equipment deals the damage to a player. That's actually pretty good, if that's the case. If it's not the case, I'll have the answer up there for you. Kemba Ka Regent, so 3 cast, 2/4. It's a cat. People love cats. At the beginning of your upkeep, create a 2/2 white creature token for each equipment attached to him, to Kemba Ka, and to it, sorry. I just am so used to saying it that way. To it. So if there's 3 equipment attached to it at the beginning of your upkeep, you can create 3 2/2 creature, white cat creature tokens. Sanctum Gargoyle, so it's just a 4 cast 2/3, and then when it enters the battlefield, you can return artifact from your graveyard to your hand. And obviously, that's the whole point here, is to keep getting your stuff back so you can keep using it over and over. Rebic, Architect of Ascension. This one's in here for some protection. It's 4 cast 3/4. Again, it has partner. It doesn't really matter. It's not the commander, but you can make it your commander and have, if you can find a red partner, and I'm sure you can because Rograk is a really good one. Artifacts you control have protection from each converted mana cost, or at this point it's been changed to mana value, among artifacts you control. So what that means is, if you have a 1 to cast artifact in play, all your artifacts have protection from anything with a mana cost of 1. Same thing with 2. So if you have something that's 2 to cast in play, all your artifacts have protection from a converted mana cost. At this point, it's mana value of 2. All right. Odric, Lunarch Marshal, so 4 to cast 3/3. This is where it gets a little weird. So Odric is just a weird card because it has so much wording. At the beginning of each combat, that's your opponent's as well. Creatures you control gain first strike until end of turn if a creature you control other than that one has first strike. And the same is also true for flying, death touch, double strike, haste, hexproof, indestructible, lifelink, menace, reach, skulk, trample, and vigilance. And my point for this card was the equipment that is in here will give some of these to them. So if one has them, they all have them during each combat. Goblin Graveler, 1 to cast for 1/1 with trample, and then it gets +2/+0 for each equipment attached to it on top of the bonus that the equipment gives it. Fervent Champion, 1 to cast 1/1, first striking and haster. When it attacks another target attacking knight you control, gets +1/+0 until end of turn. Not in here for that. It's in here for the equip abilities. You activate that target. It costs 3 less to activate, so he can be your champion, so to speak, if you will. And you can just start putting equipment on him for a lot less of a cost to equip. And this doesn't reduce it to 1, it reduces it by the 3. So some things in Magic say you cannot reduce it beyond 1. This does not say that. One of the cool things about some of the newer sets, Kamigawa came out recently, within the last couple months. Rabbit Battery is an artifact creature, but it's an equipment with a creature type. Now, that doesn't mean that they count as both. So this thing counts as an artifact, equipment, or a creature rabbit. It does not count as both when you can't go search for this. What is the problem that they're having? Not search for it. This doesn't count. The equipment part doesn't count as a creature type. So what that means is things that, like, buff a specific creature type, or you choose one. You cannot choose an equipment. You can choose rabbit, but you can't choose equipment. It does not make all of your equipment gain a +1/+1 bonus. A Coat of Arms is the card I'm thinking of. Anyway, it's a 1 to cast 1/1 haste that can be an equipment or a creature. So it reconfigures for 1 red, meaning that it can become an equipment onto a creature, or it can be unequipped from that creature and become a creature by itself. So it gives the equipped creature +1/+1 in haste, or it itself is a 1/1 haster. It's a pretty neat little thing that they did. Same thing with Simian Sling. Sorry, it's 1 to cast 1/1. The equipped creature would get +1/+1. And then whenever Simian Sting itself or the equipped creature becomes blocked, it deals 1 damage to the defending player. So this is where that's where I think about this card here, and I'm like, I already have something in here that would help it. Where is the damn thing? The Solitary Visionary. I have to look up to find out if that means if it deals combat damage or if it just deals damage in general. But either way, I'll have it up there so you can see. But that's why this is in here, because it can deal an additional damage so you can destroy more stuff. Champion of the Flames, 2 to cast 1/1, has trample, and it gets +2/+2 for each aura and equipment attached to it. So it gets buffed by its own ability and then by whatever the equipment that's attached to it. Cthulhu's Toll Collector, it's a 3 to cast 3/2. You can pay 0 to attach an equipment you control to it, and you can only activate it once. You can only activate it anytime you can cast a sorcery. You don't have to. You can do it as many times as you want. Weapons Trainer, 2 to cast 3/2, and other creatures you control get +1/+1 as long as you control an equipment. So it's a sort of Anthem creature, I guess. These are the Some of these, this one is going to be like a secret commander as well. Rayev, Master Smith, 2 to cast 2/2, and whenever a creature you control that's enchanted or equipped attacks, that creature gains double strike until end of turn, and everything here should be equipped. And you can actually, with how many creatures in here, you may even be able to go wide, but you're really trying to go tall as a Voltron. Another secret commander here is Cold, the Forge Master, so a 2 to cast 2/2. Whenever another non-token creature you control dies, if it was enchanted or equipped, return it to its owner's hand, so you can actually get those things back. So you can swing away or attack opponents with no real issue, and then you'll get it back with him in play. And then creature tokens you control that are enchanted or equipped to get +1/+1. So it's another Anthem. Now I don't have a whole lot of token creation here, just because it wasn't really necessary. It would have just muddled the deck down, and I try to keep these as focused as possible. But it's something you can think about. If you put him as the commander, you can make a token-based Voltron style. So kind of like one of the mono red deck I put together, my well-armed militia. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but I'll have him up here and you'll see. All right, another one, Akiri, Fearless Voyager. It can be a secret commander, 3 to cast, 3/3. Whenever you attack a player with 1 or more equipped creatures, you can draw a card. Always good for card draw. And then you can pay white and unattach an equipment from a creature you control. And if you do, that creature and it gains indestructible until end of turn. So it's a nice way to help protect some things as well. And then the last creature is Tiana, Ship's Caretaker. Again, could be a secret commander. 5 to cast, 3/3, flying, first strike. It's an angel, artificer. And then whenever an art or equipment you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, you may return that card to its owner's hand at the beginning of the next end step. So all about getting your stuff back if it goes away. All right, and up next, we're going to do the actual equipment. I have a whole different variety of stuff in here. I'm going to rifle through these as fast as possible and go from there. Cathar Shield, 0 to cast. It gives a creature +0/+3 in Vigilance, equips for 3. Goblin Gauntlet's probably one of the more important ones. It's 1 to cast. The equipped creature gets +1/+0 for each equipment attached to it and equips for 2. Darksteel Axe, it's indestructible. Gives +2/+0 and equips for 2. Bone Splitter, same thing, except for it doesn't give indestructible, and it equips for 1 instead of 2. Team Pennant, it's 1 to cast. Equipped creature gets +1/+1. It has Vigilance and Trample. And then if you equip a creature token, it's 1, but if you equip a regular creature, it's 3. Relic Axe, it's 2 to cast. When Relic Axe enters the battlefield, you can attach it to a creature for free. And then the equipped creature gets +1/+1. And if it's a warrior, it gets +2/+1 instead. It equips for 2, and our commander is a warrior. That's one of the reasons why that's in here. Moon Silver Spear, so equipped creature gets first strike. And then when it attacks, you can put a 4/4 angel creature token with flying onto the battlefield. It's one of the very few things that makes a token. Argentum Armor, it's 6 to cast, but it gives the creature +6/+6. And then whenever the equipped creature attacks, you can destroy target permanent. It equips for 6. The ability is quasi Eldrazi ability. That's why it says what it says. It makes them... Oh, it actually destroys it. It's quasi because it doesn't make them sacrifice it. It just makes them destroy it. Cedric Mask is 1 to cast. It gives the creature +1/+1. It can't be blocked by creatures with power 4 or greater, and equips for 2. Ancestral Blade, 2 to cast. When it enters the battlefield, you create a 1/1 soldier token. So one of the other very few things that creates a token. The equipped creature gets +1/+1, and it equips for 1. Paladin Shield, it's 2 to cast. It has flash, so you can get it casted on any like an instant. When it enters the battlefield, you can attach it to a creature. So this is one of those weird ones where you can get it on the field during other people's turns and equip it to something. And the equipped creature gets +0/+2, and equips normally for 3. Plate Armor, 3 to cast. The equipped creature gets +3/+3 and has Ward 1. Ward basically means that if somebody targets the creature with a spell and it has to target, it's not like a Wrath of God effect where everything gets affected. This is for targeting only. It costs an additional 1 to pay, and if they can't pay the additional 1, it counters it. Then you can equip cost is 3, but it costs 1 less to activate for each other enchantment you control, so you can equip it to many things in 1 turn because you may get it down to 0 equip cost. Remember, equip is only as a sorcery. Tormentor's Helm, 1 to cast. Equipped creature gets +1/+1, and whenever a equipped creature becomes blocked, it deals 1 damage to a defending player. So again, that comes up with the Solitary Visionary. Does that work? I'll have to take a look at it. I didn't even think to look at that. Equips for 1. Dueling Rapier, it's 1 to cast. Flash, so it can come into play as an instant speed. And when it enters, attach it to a creature, and the creature gets +2/+0, and normally to equip it costs 4. Boots of Speed gives +1/+0 in haste. Equips for 1, costs 1. And Bearded Axe is 3 to cast. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each dwarf, equipment, and or vehicle you control. Obviously, you're only worrying about equipment here, so it can buff up a creature really big, and it equips for 2. So that's the equipment side of it. That's what I've chosen on a budget. And last section. This is kind of like the spell section because there's not a whole lot of it. We're going to have card draw. We're going to have ways to deal with opponent's stuff, but destroying. So let's just show you. We start off with Magnetic Insight. All the stuff in here is going to be like this. So you have to discard a card to draw a card. This one you have to discard a land card to draw 2 cards. It costs 1. Cathartic Pyre, so it's 2 to cast. You get to choose here. You can choose to deal 3 damage to a creature or planeswalker, may be relevant in some cases, or you can discard up to 2 cards and draw that many cards. So you can discard 1, draw 1, you can discard 2, draw 2. Tormenting Voice, 2 to cast. Discard a card, draw 2 cards. You have to discard the card as its cost, by the way. It's a cost, not an option. Throw a Possibility, same thing at instant speed. Cathartic Reunion, instead of discarding 1 and drawing 2, now you discard 2 and draw 3. Wild Guess, you have to discard a card to draw 2 cards. This one costs 2 red instead of 1 and 1. Electric Revelation, same thing again. So it's 3 to cast, instant speed. You can discard a card. You have to discard a card to draw 2, and you can flash it back so you can use it again later. Some destruction or control aspects of this. You have Disenchant to destroy an artifact or enchantment on your opponent's side. Orm's Thunder, because it's both red and white on its color identity. You can pay 3, and then you can kick it for 1 red. You can destroy an artifact or enchantment, and if it was kicked, it deals damage equal to that permanent's mana value cost to target creature. Shenanigans, it's repeatable artifact removal. 2 to cast, destroy an artifact, and then you can dredge it out later, meaning that you can, if this card's in your graveyard, you can overturn 1 card from your library, put it into your graveyard, and instead put Shenanigans back into your hand. So if you really need artifact destruction, you can get it back later. Wear and Tear, it's actually a pretty good one. You can destroy an artifact, or you can destroy an enchantment, or you can do both by paying both costs. That's the weird thing about the cards that have Fuse, is that you can choose either or both. So. And the last card in the deck is Forging the Tyrite Sword. So it's one of those sagas that comes into play. You put a counter on it and do the thing that equal the number of counters on it. And then during your next upkeep, you put another counter on it and do the thing of how many counters there are. And then once it finally reaches its final destination, it goes into the graveyard. So this one has 1 and 2, says to create treasure tokens. So it comes into play the first turn, create a treasure token. On your next upkeep, you'll also create another treasure token. On the upkeep after that one, you can search your library for a card named Halvar, God of Battle, or an equipment card. Reveal it, put it in your hand, and then shuffle your library, and then this goes to the graveyard. So this is basically here for, I mean, if you go and do an upgrade, you can put Halvar in the deck, obviously. But for the most part, this is for equipment tutoring, so you can go find the one you're looking for on a budget. So that's the deck in a nutshell. It's actually quite fast because you're doing commander damage. So anytime that you have the ability to have the damage that you need to do to kill your opponent, commander damage or Voltron style decks are definitely the way to go. So this one has a lot of secret commanders in it that you can switch to mix and match for whatever kind of meta you have. But for the most part, it's a pretty simple idea. Stick your commander, equip it with a lot of different things that boost its power and give it a lot of abilities. Attack in for the win. Hope you get 21 damage as quickly as possible. So that's it in a nutshell. It's actually a pretty fun deck, and this one is available for sale. It is going to be at the conventions I go to. By the time this video gets revealed, they probably would have already passed because I still have to edit and everything out. But I believe Geek Fest is in South Jersey. It's going to be in Woodbury, New Jersey, if you guys are in the area. If not, I understand. If it doesn't sell at that, it's going to be available online, my Facebook page and everything like that. I'll have it up here at the end of the video or in the description of the video as well, so you can take a look at that if you're interested. But we're going to do a upgrade section for this deck. It's going to be a quick one, and we'll go from there, and I'll show you how to make this deck really shine. So let's get started. Okay, so we start off with the lands, as I always like to do. We're going to look at some of the dual lands real quick, and very quickly we're going to go over this because you have to make sure that lands come into play untapped. So the more expensive one is Sacred Foundry, which is the shock lands. You can go a little further, like a little cheaper in the check lane, which for these colors is Clifftop Retreat, or you can go even lower on the monetary scale, which would probably be the new Innistrad lands that came into play untapped if you control 2 or more basics. And for this color, it looks like it's Sundown Peak. No, sorry, Sundown Pass. It's Sundown Pass. And there's a couple other options you can look at for that. If you wanted to look further, there's a whole bunch. If you don't know what they are, you can just message me and I'll tell you. Other than that, we're going to go over some other stuff, like the buff lands. So you have lands like Castle Embereth, which helps make all your attacking creatures get +1/+0. Slayer Stronghold is a great addition to this specific style of deck. It just helps the deck a lot better. And then you've got Sunhome Fortress of Legion. It's not a rare, it's an uncommon, but it's kind of a harder one to get a hold of. It was in a precon recently, but other than that, it hasn't really had a lot of printings. You can do some artifact lands, because this deck is artifact centric. There's ways to get artifacts back. You can add in the 3 artifact lands that match the colors here, and that would be Ancient Den, Great Furnace, and then of course the colorless one, Darksteel Citadel. You've also got a new artifact land that just came out recently, and it's the indestructible one that taps for either or color of red or white. So you've got that as an option as well. After that, you've got some things that help you out that get you are able to get you land specific artifacts in your hand. So you've got Adventure's Fair, you've got Urza's Saga, which I'll probably end up adding to every single upgrade guide going forward, just because it's just really good, especially for Commander. And then you need some card draw. I've tried to fix that in the deck as much as possible, but you have things like War Room and Bonder's Enclave that will help you further get cards into your hand by drawing stuff. So, and that's just a couple of the lands you can do. There's more, I'm sure, that you would want to go over, that you want to look at, but for now, that's the options that I'm going to give you. It would help this deck, it would forward this deck's Voltron style heavily. So, after that, we're going to move on to Ramp now. Ramp is a little bit, how do I put this? It's lacking in red and white, but I will try to give you the cards that you can use to kind of get a better hold of your lands into play. Unfortunately, it's not the option here because white does a lot of mana fixing, not a lot of mana ramp. So we're going to start with Tithe. Gift of Estates and land tax. Usually I don't do land tax in a lot of decks. I don't suggest it for anything above 2 colors just because you're going to be using a lot more non-basic lands in a 3-color deck. So in a 2-color deck, land tax works. You got Smothering Tithe. A couple of the enchantments for white are all good. So Smothering Tithe is obviously one. It was just put in Double Masters 2022. Archaeomancer's Map will help you a little bit too. And then Monologue Tax. The ability to make treasure tokens can also help you in other ways. So they're artifact tokens, so they count as artifacts for things that care about that kind of thing. And then you can sacrifice them, obviously, to get a mana of any color that you need, so they're technically ramp as well. And then you have the old tried and true, the Soul Ring, the Arcane Signet, and for this deck, because there's red in it, Liquid Metal Torque is another one I would suggest. There's a couple others that you can use as well that are 2 mana to cast, but Liquid Metal Torque actually can do 2 things. You can kill your opponent's commander because you're in red. You have a lot of artifact destruction. You can turn your opponent's commander into an artifact and then kill it. With Shenanigans is the example I'll use. So all those are good options for some easy ramp that you can. I mean, Tithe is expensive, and land tax is somewhat expensive. Smothering Tithe is too, but the rest aren't horrible, so those are good options. As far as the dudes is what I call them, it's basically all the creatures. You've got your equipped dudes, so you've got things like Cloudsteel Kieran, you've got Lion Sash, and you've got Lizard Blades. All of them are artifact creatures. I'm sorry, they're artifact creatures that are equipment as well as creatures. They can reconfigure, which means they can attach to something as an equipment, or they can be their own creature. Always good to have options for that. You've got more secret second generals for your commander. Akiri, Fearless Voyager. You've got Ryu, Storm's Edge. You've got Aelith, Soul of Steel, and you've got, oh, no, that's what I got, because I think I have a Tiana Ship's Caretaker in there. If I don't, I'll add that as a suggestion. Then you've got some pure, I guess, helpful stuff. So you got Pure Steel Paladin. It's a good one to have in here. Halvar, which is what I mentioned earlier. Halvar, God of Battle. I mentioned that the last card in there was the Saga that can go get him. It's always a good option to put in. Stoneforge Mystic lets you go search for any artifacts, and obviously if you've not played Modern in the last 20 not 20, 15 years, at one point in time, Stoneforge Mystic had to be banned because she was so good. Esper Sentinel is a good one. Stormkiln Artist is a good one as well. And then you've got Bronze Guardian and Iros, God of Victory, so that when you attack, your guys can stay alive because it prevents all damage to them. All good, solid creatures that you can add into this deck to make this deck a lot more mean. Some spells you can add. So we've got removal. Obviously, removal is good, but let's show you some good targeted removal. We know Swords to Plowshares is probably one of the kings here. It's always good, but stuff like single combat are a great option here because you're at Voltron. You need one guy to stick, and he can attack you. Build him up with all the artifact equipment stuff, and attack in. Single combat will make it so you can at least have one creature. Sure, let your opponents keep one, but at the same time, you're going to have the bigger dude. So then we've got Vandal Blast, something that I always suggest to everybody that's in red because it destroys all artifacts your opponents control if you do the what the hell is it? The cost, the extra cost. You have tutors, and white actually has a good set of tutors here. You have Enlightened Tutor, that'll go get an artifact or enchantment. Open the Armory, goes and gets equipment. And Steel Shaper's Gift also gets an equipment, so all good stuff here. You can also use Gamble from red. I don't always really like Gamble because the opportunity to grab the card and then it gets discarded randomly is a feels bad moment, but it's possible because if you're going for an equipment and you have stuff to get the equipment back from your graveyard to your hand, it still works. It's just kind of, feels bad if you go and get something specifically and it goes to the graveyard immediately. What else we got here? Some, stuff that can help you, I guess, protect your guys or what have you. You've got things like a Deflecting Swat. It's the free one that came in Commander. I think it was 2020. You got Teferi's Protection. Helps protect all your stuff. And then you have Just Guy's Will. Now, that's not to protect things. That's to kind of help you, ramp a little bit more, but do it in a way that's red, red's the way to do it. And then we got some enchantments, and the enchantments are going to be a small section here. You got things like Darksteel Mutation. I suggest that to everybody who's playing white, specifically because you can lock down somebody's commander, make it indestructible. Unless they have a way to sacrifice it, it's just going to sit there as an 0-1. And then you've got Showdown of the Scalds. That's one you can use. And then you've got 2 classes, and I like the classes a lot because they're extremely helpful in a lot of ways. You've got Fighter class, and you've got Paladin class. Both of them will be good in this deck. A couple of artifacts that you're going to look at, and the artifacts is going to be a little weird when I start off, just because I'm going to leave one out specifically, but I'm going to mention that all the swords are, the ones that came from Scars of Mirrodin, that you can equip to your creature, and they get +2/+2, protection from 2 colors, and then they have 2 abilities. All of them will really work, but there's one that I will mention in a little bit that's just very key here, and especially should be used. Other than that, though, you've got sort of the Atomist, so it can help you land ramp. Sun Forger, so you can go, get things that you need. Commander's Plate is a good one, especially an equipment-based deck, but there's a lot of equipment that you can use. There are so many equipment that you could use here that, I put in the budget versions. There are a lot of ones that are not budget that you can use. As far as the walkers are concerned, though, there's one specific one, and what I mean by one is one named one, and there's 3 versions that you can use. It's Nahiri. So you can use the Heir of Ancients, the Storm of Stone, or the Lithomancer. All of them are Nahiri, but they're in different forms, and they all will help make this deck better. And last thing I'm going to go over is the combo section. And the reason why I'm going to go over it last and specifically as quickly as possible is because I just mentioned the swords earlier. The one I'm talking about the most is Sword of Feast and Famine. You want to add that with an Aggravated Assault and the Iros, God of Victory, or Dolmen Gate if you want to not have it be a creature. So Aggravated Assault says that you can untap everything for 4 and have an additional combat phase. And Sword of Feast and Famine says that whenever you attack with the creature that it's equipping, you can untap all lands you control, and that gives you infinite attack phases. And the reason why Iros, God of Victory, or Dolmen Gate are needed for this is because it prevents all combat damage to attacking creatures, so that the creatures, that when they keep attacking, if they're blocked, they can still survive. So it's an infinite combo to attack, and you want to be able to keep your people alive, so those are necessary. And that's what I've got for you. Those are pretty much the upgrades that I would suggest to add to this deck if you do purchase this. If you want to keep it on the lower side, I mentioned a couple things that are on the lower side monetarily, and then of course some of the things on here like the Aggravated Assault, Sword of Feast and Famine, they're a little bit more on the expensive side, but aren't all, infinite combo pieces. They're a little bit more on the expensive side. So that's what I got for you as far as the upgrade section. If you have any comments, questions, or concerns, let me know. I will leave my contact information here. That's Facebook page is bluebeargames.online. The email address is bluebearsgames@gmail.com. Or you can just leave a comment with your information that I can contact you, and I'll go ahead and do so. As I mentioned before, again, this deck, like all my other decks that I usually put up here, are for sale. So if you wanted to do that, you can use the same contact information, and we will talk about that. Other than that, this is when I'm going to ask you to please do me the favor, like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, or share this out to somebody who may be looking to build a Voltron-style deck, specifically with Bruenor. But one of the best things about this deck is that this deck has a lot of secret commanders, so you can use any of the commanders. After that, the only thing I got left today is have a good day. Join me next week for another commander deck build. Have a good one.